Sega! You know, after all the recent releases, I'm feeling some Black Templar today.
The Emperor grants expansionism only to mankind, Blue Alien.
Blue Alien? Tau? Ah! They randomly got a turret here. Go get them, Tech Marine! And get the Crusaders out here. Until they get out here, I can't do anything. You know, I never look too closely at the units in this game. This Tech Marine is interesting. Other than the servo arm on his back, you'd barely tell he was a Tech Marine. Which isn't a bad thing. Him being generic makes him feel more unique in a way. It gives me the idea for a kit bash. After this match, I should— oh no, the base!
No,
Tech Marine, go fix it! Oh. Looking at the datasheet, if we want him to be generic, I just so happen to have a ready-made one right here from an old project. But what about a chain sword? Oh, I do have one of these. It's from the Tartaros Terminators box. It would fit in well as a chain bayonet if we want to go a bit rogue trader. Oh, or we could go more apothecary style and put it on his arm. Now that we're ready, I started on the legs. I'm gonna be making a separate tutorial on how to make true scale marines. One, because I'd rather point to that video in the future, rather than say the same thing every time, but because I also didn't do a good job this time around, so it's not really tutorial worthy. So I started the real conversion with the backpack, cutting off the vents so I could magnetize them, because next we're going to add the servo arm using the sprue. I got a bit with a round bit like this. I cleaned up the round end so that it was actually round, and magnetized that end too, and I magnetized it to the backpack. Next, I cut away a bit of the arm so I could do the same there. Starting on the claw, I shaved down some sprue to be half as thick, and put it up against the part that will eventually be the piston. I glued two of these small bits together, then checked again and cut as needed. After that, it was able to go along its track perfectly. And then I put some more battle damage on his shoulder for no real reason. After putting on a bit on one end and a magnet on the other, it was starting to come together. Now for the claw. I started trying to emulate what they did in game, but in the end it didn't work out how I wanted, so I ended up making it bigger, which made it worse. But I made this out of the offcuts, and with some added sprue, it works out much better. Then I started adding random details, although the footage is gone for some reason, but you can see what I did. On this bit, I wanted to try doing something I noticed in Space Marine. These little pipes going from his backpack to his neck were always a neat little detail to me. Now on to painting. Of course, Tech Marines are normally red, and I would recommend doing it that way too. Especially if your army doesn't have a lot of red. Helps him stand out. Of course, he won't stand out very much against my Blood Angels. Anyways, I'm gonna do the arm as metal. But I'm definitely going to do some arms as other colors in the future. Then I started painting the Cog Mechanicus with gray everywhere. On his head there was a skull which I painted a circle around. Now onto the dreaded freehand. Starting with a plus, as I've heard is good for doing circles, then all I'd have to do is connect the dots and fill in the center. Obviously it wasn't perfect, so I went back and tried to make it as round as possible, and now I try to make a skull. Nice. And while I had white on the palette, I painted the right of the cog and the left of the skull, and with a dark gray I painted the rest. And then I add some filler audio so that you can actually see what I'm doing. Going back in with the red, I made the cog into a cog, and then I just painted in the eyes. And now all that's left is the smaller details like the cables. Since he's a Blood Angel, I made his right shoulder a brighter red to make it different from the rest of them. Then we freehand the chapter's icon, of course. And now is when we make him different from the rest of his brothers. He clearly doesn't clean his armor very much. I even did a second coat, because I didn't think he was dark enough. But what I should have done was make his base coat a darker red, because in the end it just covered up everything we just did.